He always considered myself an exemplary family man. My wife Anne and I have been married for 5 years, and we have a great relationship based on trust and understanding. At least that's how it was until recently. It all started with that ill-fated dinner at the restaurant. We invited my mother-in-law, Victoria, who came to visit us from another state. I was never a big fan of Victoria. She seemed too frivolous and erratic to me. But Anne loves her mother very much, so I tried to be polite and patient. At the restaurant, Victoria immediately ordered herself a cocktail, despite my objections. I don't drink alcohol and don't approve of others abusing it, but Victoria just brushed me off. "Oh, come on, Max," she said, taking a sip. "A little drink never hurt anyone. You should learn to relax, too." I remained silent, not wanting to get into an argument. Anne also looked slightly embarrassed by her mother's behavior but said nothing. Throughout the evening, Victoria continued to flirt with me, making ambiguous jokes and casting meaningful glances. I tried to ignore it, attributing everything to the effect of alcohol. But some part of me, to my shame, began to respond to her advances. After dinner, Anne said she wasn't feeling well and would take a taxi home. I volunteered to drive Victoria to her hotel, as she was quite tipsy. An awkward silence hung in the car on the way. "Thanks for the ride, Max," Victoria suddenly said, putting her hand on my knee. "You're such a gentleman." I tensed at her touch but tried to stay calm. "It's just a courtesy, Victoria. You are my wife's mother, after all." She chuckled and leaned back in her seat. "I've forgotten what it's like to be wanted," she drawled. "My ex-husband completely stopped paying attention to me before the divorce. But I've still got it, don't I?" With those words, Victoria extended her leg, sheathed in a thin stocking. My mouth went dry, and I nearly missed the turn. "Victoria, you're drunk," I said firmly. "Let me just take you to the hotel and we'll forget about this conversation." But she suddenly leaned forward and whispered right into my ear, "What if I don't want to forget? What if I want to continue what started between us at the restaurant?" Her words and hot breath sent a shiver down my spine. I swallowed hard and pulled over to the side of the road. Turning to Victoria, I tried to appeal to her reason. "Listen, what you're saying is crazy. You're Anne's mother, my mother-in-law. There can't be anything between us." But Victoria just smiled, a kind of predatory smile. "Oh, I think there very well can be. You know, secretly, I never really loved my ex. I married him young because of the pregnancy, and he turned out to be such a bore in bed. Not like you." She leaned towards me, clearly about to kiss me, but I pulled away and started the car. "No, Victoria, I can't. Even if I wanted to, which I definitely don't, it would be a betrayal of Anne. I love my wife." For the rest of the ride to the hotel, Victoria pouted and didn't say another word. Arriving at the hotel, I got out of the car to open the door for Victoria. Instead of getting out, she suddenly grabbed my hand and pulled me towards her. Caught off guard, I lost my balance and practically fell on top of her. Our faces were inches apart. It all happened too quickly. 1 second I was still trying to break free, and the next, Victoria was already kissing me passionately. For a moment I froze, shocked by her onslaught. But then, to my horror, I began to respond. It was like a fog. All arguments of reason evaporated, replaced by animal desire. We kissed fiercely, feverishly, crumpling each other's clothes. "Let's go up to my room," Victoria murmured breathlessly between kisses. And instead of refusing, I just nodded. As if entranced, I followed her to the room, not even thinking about the consequences. Once inside, Victoria immediately began pulling off my shirt. I, too, as if in a dream, started undressing her, covering her bare skin with greedy kisses. We fell onto the bed, our bodies intertwined. My mind was telling me that this was wrong, that I needed to stop before it was too late. But my body wouldn't obey, succumbing only to the irresistible passion. Everything after that blurred into a whirlwind of uncontrollable, almost animalistic sex. We didn't hold back moans or cries, moving in a single frenzied rhythm. I think Victoria scratched my back with her nails until it bled at some point, but the pain only spurred me on, adding sharpness to the sensations. The pleasure hit us simultaneously, making us arch in a single spasm of pleasure. For a few seconds, I went blind and deaf, completely lost in the brightest flash of ecstasy. And then came the sobering up, and with it, the monstrous realization of what I had done. In the morning, I woke up completely exhausted. But worst of all was the feeling of guilt and shame that instantly overwhelmed me as soon as I opened my eyes. Victoria was sleeping next to me, turned away towards the wall. I looked at her bare back and thought about how I could have let this happen. How I could have betrayed my beloved wife by sleeping with her mother. As if sensing my gaze, Victoria suddenly stirred and sat up in bed. Seeing me, she groaned and clutched her head. "Oh God, what have we done? Damn alcohol! Why did I even drink last night?" I chuckled mirthlessly. Of course, she's blaming it all on the booze. Of course, it's the alcohol's fault, not her far-fetched advances. "Victoria, listen. What happened? It was a mistake. I shouldn't have given in, shouldn't have allowed it. Let's just forget about it, okay?" She gave me a haunted look and nodded. "Of course, let's forget it. God, I'm never drinking again, I swear. Poor Anne, how could I do this to her?" At that, Victoria suddenly burst into tears. I awkwardly hugged her shoulders, trying to comfort her, although I myself felt like howling in despair. "Shh, shh. No one will know. This will stay between us. We'll just pretend it never happened." "You promise?" she asked, sniffling. "You promise you won't tell Anne?" "I promise," I said firmly. "She's better off not knowing. No need to hurt her." Victoria nodded gratefully and wiped her tears, and I thought that I was primarily protecting not her feelings, but my own skin. Because if Anne found out, she would never forgive me. In the following days, I tried to spend as little time alone with Victoria as possible. We both understood that what had happened between us was a mistake, and the best way out was to pretend that nothing had occurred. Anne seemed to notice nothing. She was glad that her mother and I had finally found common ground and were no longer sniping at each other over trifles. If only she knew what price I paid for this illusory truce. The day before Victoria's departure, we all sat together at dinner, and I suddenly caught myself thinking that I would be glad when she left. Despite our agreements, every time I met her gaze, I felt shame and guilt. After dinner, Victoria pulled me aside for a talk. I tensed inwardly, preparing for the worst. "Max, I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "And I realized that I can't go on like this anymore. This secret is eating me up inside." My heart sank. Was she going to confess everything to Anne after all? "Victoria, please, you promised." She stopped me with a gesture. "No, I'm not going to tell Anne anything. But I have to change something in my life. I can't keep acting like some loose woman." I flinched in surprise. It seems that our affair really did awaken something like a conscience in Victoria. "I've decided to quit drinking," she continued, "and start over, maybe even find a proper job, do something with myself. I'm tired of being a burden to my daughter and always ruining everything for everyone." On the last words, her voice faltered, and I suddenly saw in her not a fatal seductress, but a tired, broken woman who just wants some simple human happiness. "Victoria, I'm glad you made this decision," I said sincerely, "and I believe that you can do it. You're strong, you'll manage." She smiled gratefully through the welling tears. "Thank you, Max, and forgive me if you can, for everything." I nodded, feeling my own throat tighten with the surge of emotions. "Of course, let's forgive each other and move on. This was a lesson for us both." We hugged goodbye, without any hint of flirting this time, just as friends. And the next day Victoria left, taking our secret and the chance for redemption of past mistakes with her. Life went on as usual. Anne and I were happy again like before, and Victoria would call her daughter from time to time, telling her about her progress. Apparently, she really did get her act together. And only one thing reminded me of what had happened between us: a tiny butterfly tattoo on my wrist. The exact same butterfly I once saw on Victoria's shoulder, on that very night. It was my personal mark of shame, but at the same time, also a symbol of hope. Because if even a frivolous woman like Victoria managed to change and start anew, then I still have a chance to atone for my guilt. The main thing is to remember this every day, and never, ever again betray the love that fate has granted me. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.